Welcome to Talks with Summer, seeing the world through the eyes of another. Today, I have with me Sabrina McGuigan. Welcome, Sabrina. How are you today?
I'm great. It's so nice to see you after all these years in person.
I know. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I work for Takeda Pharmaceuticals in global medical affairs. I've been doing my industry for 20 years. You and I met at the Long Branch half marathon Sister were running.
Yes.
And at the time, my colleague, Chelsea, who was also a runner, she's the one that introduced me to the half marathon, and I participated in that as well. I remember the lovely conversation that we had and talking about art and just life and just getting older and all of those things.
Yes.
And just the different parts of what makes us up as humans, work and outside of work. Yeah, I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I moved up here in January of 2025 for this role that I'm currently doing, but I was previously in New Jersey for 15 years. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Just to go back to 13 years ago, I think you were so helpful. I think that was for me, it was an example of goodness exists in the world and how, for me, like we were stuck. We didn't know which train to take. We didn't know which bus to take. And you were like an angel who helped us. And then we formed this connection and we haven't talked all these years. And here we are again. So I marvel at such things and such connections always.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. And you and your sister reminded me a lot of me and my sister, the relationship and the bond. And I was drawn immediately to that. I thought we had some really great conversation that day and follow you guys on social media. So it's nice to see your journey and see how you've evolved to different things but all within the same sort of subset. So
yes.
When you reached out, I was like, oh my God, I haven't spoken to her in person in over a decade. This would be great.
Yes, I know. And it's so wonderful.
Yeah.
So where did you grow up? Tell us about your childhood days.
Sure. So I was born in New York, and until the fourth grade, I was in Long Island, New York. And we lived in a 3-family home. My sister, my parents, and myself, we lived on one floor. And then my mom's sister and her husband and their 2 daughters, my cousins, they lived on the second floor. And then my grandparents lived on the first floor. So we were all in the same house. We went to the same school. A lot of our family lived locally in Lindenhurst. So they would come and they would come for Sunday dinners or come for holidays. And my grandmother we were raised Catholic, so she would do a big dinner for Christmas and a big dinner for Easter. So that was always fun. We were always about family. Family was always getting together. And then when I was in the 4th grade, my father wanted to buy his own house. So we moved out to Effort, Pennsylvania in the Poconos. And I spent the rest of my time there till I graduated, and then made lots of friends, was very involved in sports and activities, and then fell in love with Lehigh University, which is where I went to undergrad. And while I was in Pennsylvania, I also fell in love with helping people. And that's part of my junior year of programming at school. They had this thing called government ambassadors, and you could pick a different subunit of the local government to work with. And for myself, I was always interested in medicine. So I was going to shadow the coroner that year. And then that year, the coroner, because of some things that had come up with workflow and everything, wound up not taking a student. And I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to be a judge. I don't want to be this. I was very thankful that the guidance counselor was creative, and they were like, what about if we got a spot with you to run with the local ambulance? And I did that for the whole semester. I would leave school early on Wednesdays, and I would go and I would shadow that. They gave me the jumpsuit, and I would get on the ambulance, and they had me take a class. So I was a first responder, and now I would provide basic level care. And then from that, because I was so motivated by helping others, I wound up going for my EMT license, and I've kept that active all of these years. And I got to actually use it this past year at the New York City Marathon, where I was an EMT at the finish line. And that was very interesting experience, but good one. But yeah, and my sister and I, like most sisters, we fought like cats and dogs when we were younger. And now we're the best of friends. And she lives in Yonkers, New York with her husband, Varin. And they have 3 kids that are young. And I get to go play with them when I go back to visit. But I think we have like very similar, like family-esque backgrounds where the family unit's very important. It's very tight. And I think that's also part of what like draws people together, is if you see that commonality.
Yes. I completely resonate with that. Even especially because I know you saw I'm also very close to my sister, and then losses through life, we got even more closer. So I resonate with that a lot myself.
Yes.
Is there any incident which you would like to share which shaped your life?
It actually happened before we met. I was married once in the earlier 2000s to someone I had met in college, and we got pregnant. And I was pregnant with twin girls. I was a high risk pregnancy, so I had to go for extra testing, so I knew that they were girls. And in my second trimester, I unfortunately had a placental abruption and I lost them. And I think that was about 15 years ago. As much as that has brought a lot of grief and sadness, it also was a turning point in my life. My husband and I wound up separating over that incident and then getting divorced. And I think I had a different philosophy about life and about what was important and where I was focusing. And I was always really driving hard at goals and what can I do better? What can I do more of? How can I make more money? How can I do more things? How can I put a lot of things in a priority space before my pregnancy? And then after I lost the twins, partly because I had to, because I wound up getting a really bad staph infection afterwards. And I was in the ICU for over a week and a half fighting that infection. But I had to really stop and think about what was important and then what was my purpose. Because for a long time, I was very sad. I didn't think I had a purpose. I really didn't want to be around. I was probably a little bit careless with my life. And it was my sister who eventually snapped me out of it. And she was like, "You're my best friend and I can't lose my best friend. So what do I need to do to pull you out of this hole?" And it took some therapy. It took a lot of friends. It took a lot of self-reflection and evaluation. But I realized that I was not serving them or honoring their memory if I just was careless. And so I tried to do things that are helpful for people because of them, in their honor. I want to know one day when I lay my head down for the last time, and I believe in heaven because of them, that when I get to meet them, they tell me that they're proud of me. The one thing I'm super excited about that I'm currently working on is I got the opportunity to meet the CEO of Black Girls Code, which is a program that teaches young Black girls how to provide opportunities for them across different industry sectors. And I got to meet the CEO, and I've been working with her head of strategic alliances to develop a program because they didn't have one in healthcare before with Takeda. So we're looking to roll out some opportunities for those young women to get to see this side of life because they're working with fintech, they're working with other industry channels. Like, this is what we're doing in science to advance technology, using technology to advance things. So I try to model my life off of those things.
I just want to say thank you for your vulnerability and thank you for making me and everybody a part of your pain.
Yeah.
I know loss just changes us completely and makes us into a different person.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers myself, but I feel your pain. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Recently, I did another interview with one of my very dear friends, and she's 50 years old, and she also had a miscarriage, and she always wanted to be a mom. And we talked, all our interview is about the challenges and about what people say and people's perceptions and pointed fingers and all of those things. So I completely resonate with that, being myself, and I don't have children, and I'm in my early 40s, and all these questions keep arising all the time.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because a lot of them feel like they come from a place of judgment. And then some, to that point, I was hanging out with a good friend of mine who lives in Boston, and she's a single mom of 3 kids. And her middle child and I were joking around and playing around. And she was sitting on my lap and she's, "You're so fun." And I was like, "Thank you." And she goes, "You didn't want to have kids?" And I was like, oof. Because when an adult asks you that, you can choose this based on the tone and the context of the conversation if you're snarky or not in that response, right?
Yes.
"Sorry, I'm not a baby making factory," or whatever. You don't know everybody's story. So maybe make assumptions before you, or maybe get to know someone before you ask a question like that. But when it's a child, it's it comes from a place of innocence. So you're like, "Oh crap, how do I answer this now?" And it made me pause. And I was like, no, I did want to be a mommy, but it wasn't my story. I said, plus, I said, I get the best of all of it because I get to be your auntie and I get to hang out with all of you guys. And I think my sister knows that like her kids are like, I would move heaven and earth for them. And most of my friends who have kids that call me Aunt Sabrina, same thing. But it is hard, especially if you're a career driven woman and that has been your story, like your friend, like that. Of course, I wanted to be a mother, but sometimes it's not part of our story for whatever reason. Or sometimes it's just because you don't want to. And that answer is good too. To be able to explain that to people. I used to think that I had a harder time having that conversation with men, but I find I have a harder time having that conversation with women because it feels so judgy, especially if they're a parent.
Judgy is the word.
Like, and come on, we're in the same club. Can we support each other? And maybe could you like do a little homework before you throw out that level of a question? But yeah, no, I can imagine what's been fielded your way. And I think I've seen that based on your demographic or your cultural background, like that also can play a part. Like my sister's husband is Indian and his parents for over a decade were like, are you having kids? Are you having kids? Are you having kids? Are you having kids? And they finally gave up. And then when my sister showed them, when she announced her pregnancy of her first son to her in-laws, who at the time were still living in India. They have since moved to New York and they're helping with childcare because they're so excited that they have 3 grandbabies now. You know, Vicky held the photo up of the sonogram. They were like, are you joking? And she was like, no, I'm not joking. This is real. So I think it's an interesting journey to travel when you are in the shoes of the person that doesn't have the kids. But I encourage all people to figure out their own narrative, whether they are a mom or not a mom, and be kind to themselves as they're figuring that narrative out, because we don't really need to answer that for anybody.
Yes, that's very well said. And I talk to my sister also all the time, and she goes through it many times because she's a career woman and she's traveling all the time. And just recently, she was on one of her trips to some other city, and they're having dinner at night. And she said everybody's talking about their families and asking about their children. And they come to me and they think they automatically had stories in their heads as to why she doesn't have children right now.
Yeah.
And I could see she was aggravated by that. But I think what you just said is that it's important for us to figure out what our narrative of the situation is.
Yeah. Yeah. And to also accept and welcome the idea that we don't have to explain it to anyone. I think that's the other thing too, is when someone asks a tough question that seems to challenge a choice about our life or something that we didn't choose, but just is the fact about our life, we feel like we owe people an explanation on why the current state of affairs are the way that they are. And it's like, you really don't owe anybody anything. You can choose to provide them more data and more information, and you can also choose to close that conversation down.
What is something which is very close to your heart, or what is something you are passionate about?
Health equity. I, especially during COVID, got a very, not that I didn't know it existed and not that I hadn't seen it before, especially in my work as an EMT, but I did get a very close picture from some connections that I wound up making during COVID that we need to do better when it comes to treating people regardless of their socioeconomic structure, their demographics, et cetera. We need to level out that playing field a little bit more in terms of like health and educating. Like our health literacy is so low. If you look it up, they'll say it's at the 5th, 6th grade reading level, but it's actually lower than that because there's so many people that are not factoring into that number, including prisoners, which the majority of prisoners are illiterate. And I know this from some work that I got to do with one company on developing educational opportunities for prisoners to teach them about their chronic disease states. And I think we need to do a better job of making sure that we do a very good job of making things flashy and trying to sell people things like this is going to make you better. This is going to make you thinner. This is going to make you happier. This is going to make you prettier. All of these ideals that were constructed in terms of this consumer world. And I think we don't always explain the consequences that come along with those things. And people are looking for quick fixes. I'll get this surgery. I'll have this procedure, or I'll take this drug, or I'll do this. And they don't realize that maybe 10 years down the road, it could affect their existence. So I think like education is super important. And I think having a sense of empathy for people and knowing that just because of what you see doesn't mean that that's what it is. And it's similar to the child thing. It's, for instance, people that are overweight, like we have a high obesity level in this country. There's a lot of contributing factors to that. Are some of them self-driven? Sure. But there's also genetics that play a part in that. There's also access to if you walk into any fast food restaurant and you have $5 and you're hungry, you can very easily eat the stuff that is considered not good for you and be full when you walk out. But if you want to get a salad or something like that, it's more expensive. Even when you go grocery shopping, they always say shop the perimeter. And that is the ideal way to shop. Also look at the stuff that's on WIC, on the government assistance programs. It's like cereal, a certain type of bread, cheese, milk. Like, where are the vegetables? Where are the fruits? Like, where are the things that we're promoting for a healthy lifestyle to keep people off medications so that they live a better and longer existence, not being pumped full of things that they don't need. I work in medicine, and I work in pharmaceuticals. So I'm not anti-drug, but I think a lot of the times we lose that lifestyle like factor. And so we need to be more empathetic that people wind up in places that they're at that aren't necessarily driven from a place of carelessness.
Who has been the most influential person in your life and how have they impacted you?
My grandmother. It's so easy. My nanny. She's been gone for, when did she pass away? I think 2014. So she's been gone for over a decade, but she was my best friend. She was my mom's mom. My sister was very close with my grandfather, who is her husband, and I loved him too. But my nanny and I were super close. And towards the end of her life cycle, we would go on dates. And she was so funny. She loved horror movies, and I hated them. I was so afraid of them. And this was back before we had smartphones and stuff. And I would bring the newspaper to pick out a movie. And she always seemed to be able to pick out the horror movie. And then I didn't want to tell her no. She was 80-something years old. She was living in a nursing home. I was like, she gets what she wants because this is her date. And so we would go sit, and she'd spend half the movie laughing at me, covering my eyes and squeeching in the chair and like being afraid. But she had a hard life. And she, to me, was the definition of tenacity, of grit. Like she grew up during the Depression. She was one of 13 children. Her mother passed away when she was really young, and she was the only one that was sent away to go live with an aunt. And she didn't have a very easy childhood. And then she came back, and her husband, who she met and married and loved, wound up going off to World War II. She didn't know if she'd see him again. She was pregnant with her first child when that happened. And then he came back, and he had struggles with PTSD. And she was always a supportive wife. She was a dedicated wife. She worked several jobs, plus kept the household, plus raised 3 kids. She was always there for everybody. And she was not judgmental. She was a devout Catholic, but she welcomed everyone. I remember bringing kids home from the Yale School of Drama that were in the LGBTQ community. And she didn't care. She was like, all I care about is that you eat. She was your quintessential Italian, where she's make sure you leave here with a full belly. Otherwise, anything else, don't care. Very welcoming, very loving. She was a jokester. She had a great sense of humor. And when I lost my kids, she was a rock. Like, she said some really fundamental things to me that helped shape my pathway forward. So she was my favorite human. She always will be.
What was her name?
But her name was Eleanor.
Here's to Eleanor.
Yes.
In her memory.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. Is there any advice you would give your younger self looking back at your life now?
I work in a department that has a range of age demographics, and most of those are young. And like, I see them fretting and throttling over things, and I'm like, it's not that important. You're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. There was a doctor that I used to work with out of downstate Brooklyn, and she used to drive me crazy because she'd always be late. She was perpetually late. And I, at the time, this was my pre-twin era, I was like, we're going to be late. We're going to miss the meeting. You're supposed to be talking on stage. And I would be freaking out. And she would be like, but no one died.
Yes, I say that all the time.
Yes. And she would put that into perspective all the time. And like, I find myself saying that occasionally. I'm like, but no one died. And it's like, you have to, I think sometimes we put so much onus and so much real estate on things that are important, but they are not deal breakers. And it's, I think with age, as I'm sure you've discovered, and I've discovered myself, and I tell people that too. I'm like, when you're 10 years older, you're going to feel differently. With age comes just understanding. I wouldn't say wisdom. It's more like understanding, like we have a better sense of what is important and what really is something that we want to hang our hat on in terms of giving it that level of importance or value.
Importance.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you feel the purpose of life is for you? Or in other words, what do you feel is your personal quest in life?
I think it is to open doors for people that doors have been taken away from, or that they don't know the doors exist. I don't know if this is because of it, but I know like when I was younger, like in the single digits of age, I was bullied. And after that, I became completely anti-bully in any sense of the word. So when I see someone struggling or someone in need, or that, I think like it's a big part of the reason why I'm driving this program for Black Girls Code, is that there's a lot of opportunity for everyone. And I tell this to young women too. I'm like, stop fighting each other over the same piece of pie.
Yeah.
Let's work together and get more pie. Who says that we only get the one piece? Let's get more pie. And I think for me, if I can, like I said, the last time I lay my head down to rest and I wake up in heaven with my girls and they tell me, we're proud of you, mommy. You helped a lot of people. Like that, I did what I was supposed to do. And I don't need to make, like when I was younger, like it was like, oh, how much money can I make? Or how many countries can I visit? Or how many cool things can I do? And now that stuff's still cool, but like it doesn't have any level of importance on my radar. It just is a fact of life. Can I pay my bills? Great, check. And I think like now it's more, did I help someone that needed it? That's important.
Is there any book, quote, or philosophy that has shaped your outlook on life?
My favorite book, and I handed out to some people. I actually gave it to an ex-boyfriend's cousin's daughter because she was going off to college and she was very anxiety ridden. And it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Okay.
And what's wonderful about the book is it's all about what we've just been talking about, is putting things in context, like giving things value. Like it's not about not caring. It's about, are you caring about the right things? What are the things that are keeping you up at night? Should they be? And I think as we transgress through the different stages of life and kind of figure out who we are as people, which is a lifetime journey, there's no stopping point on that. It doesn't matter how old we are. We're constantly reinventing ourselves.
Yeah.
What is really important? And I think relationships are important. Doing good is important. All that other stuff is like fluff. Like if my sister calls me tomorrow and says, I need you, I'm going to get in my car regardless of what I'm doing, and I'm going to go see her. And I'll just politely tell whoever I have plans or meetings with, got to move it. But if she needs me, I'm there. Like no questions asked.
If it were a perfect world, and hypothetically speaking, what does that look like in your eyes?
There's something about imperfection. Also, we need a level of conflict for us to appreciate aspects of life. So I wouldn't want it to be conflict free, but I think that there are some things we could do without. People should have a roof over their head. Like people would be homed. People would be able to feed themselves. People, if they needed it, would be able to get access to medications. Obviously a perfect world could be like, there's no disease, there's no this, no one dies, but that's not life. And I think a perfect world would be like that we have the bare necessities that we should be afforded as humans.
What is something that you would like the world to know about you, which you feel is often misunderstood?
I do come off as very outgoing. And someone said this to me earlier, actually today, because she's younger, she's on the team, and she was talking to me about, I'm so afraid of meeting people, but you seem like you love meeting people. And I'm like, I do like meeting people. I do love people. I'm like, But I'll tell you the truth, it still scares me. Anytime I have to give a presentation, about 5 minutes beforehand, I'm trying not to puke on my shoes. Like, as much as I'm an extrovert, like if I go to a meeting and I have to be on for the entire day for a couple of days, the thing I have to do for myself is shut myself in for at least a day and just be in quiet and read and not have social media or external things going on. And I'll just stay in my place and I just need to reset, because it's like a lot of expanded energy. So as much as I come off as being like that extrovert type A personality, and I think depending on what profile you look at, I'm a yellow, or I'm an I in the DISC profile, or I'm in whatever letters in the Myers-Briggs. While that is all true, I do appreciate my quiet.
What does peace mean to you personally?
I think fairness. I think there's always going to be conflict, and there needs to be some level, like I said, there needs to be some level of conflict. And what kind of society would we be if we all agreed with each other all of the time? Like, we would have no growth. We'd have no advancement. We wouldn't figure out problems. But I think that there needs to be a better level of respect. I think we've lost that. That's what I've seen us lose in the last couple of years, maybe decade or so, is even if you don't agree with somebody, there was a level of respect to have the discussion. And now people, it's just, you're stupid, and that's this, and that's that. And people are very quick to throw a label, throw a name, elevate the situation to a heightened level. But there is a lack of care of emotional IQ, which is important. And I think peace could be instituting that respect again. That we don't have to agree on everything, but like, you have a right to your own opinion. That's what makes us different than the other mammals, is we can form objective opinions or subjective opinions about things, and we can have discussion and we can rationalize. And now it's just like, no one cares that that's allowed.
I've started to think, I was talking to a friend a couple of days back, and we were not agreeing on our idea about this topic. And I said that we are friends and we are going to agree to disagree on this always, and support each other and pray for each other's success. But I thought about it afterwards, and I feel like when someone disagrees with us, and I looked inside that, why does it bother us? It's almost like we feel threatened and we feel challenged in our own belief, which makes us want to today enforce ours on others so that we are more comfortable with ours.
Agreed. And I think that's a good thing. It's like, we need to get comfortable resting in the uncomfort.
From your entire journey in life so far, what would you like to share with our listeners, which you feel would be helpful to them?
I think, again, don't take things too seriously. As you navigate conflict in your life, take a step back from it and decide, is this important? Is it worth potentially losing a relationship over? What about it is so triggering? I saw a talk earlier today while I was in between meetings. I was watching short videos, and they were talking about trauma. And they're like, trauma often starts from before the point of the event in which triggers it. If you're in an engagement and something is bothering you, take a step back from it and think about, what about it? This is so triggering to me. And is it this event, or is it something that was born years ago inside of you that like you haven't addressed?
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Those were all my questions for today. This was wonderful. If there's anything else you want to share as a parting note, or anything else to whoever, a message to the listeners.
No, I'm just super excited to hear this at some point and hear the other podcasts. And I'm so honored that you called me to do this with you, Summer. And I remember fondly that meeting 13 years ago, out in the cold.
Yes.
I think it was like starting to rain, and it was like overcast, and everyone was just done because you just ran 13 plus miles. And you're like, what? I don't know about you, but I was like, this is a reminder that I hate running.
And we still do it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things.
Yes.
But thank you so much. It was my pleasure to have you here. To know more about what I do and offer, visit my website, samroshni.com, or find me on Instagram at samroshni coaching. Thank you.